Is Coby Mayo putting together the greatest platoon season by a righty in Orioles history?
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Friday, August 28th, 2026, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we will recap an Orioles tough 7-5 loss to the Cardinals on Thursday afternoon. Still won the series, but were not able to finish off the sweep. Trevor Rogers struggled a little bit. O's made a late rally, but it wasn't quite enough. Coby Mayo continued to mash lefties, though. We'll look about his historic season from that platoon and then get you ready for an Orioles series at a AAA ballpark against the A's coming up this weekend. But we begin with an Orioles loss on Thursday afternoon. Final score from Busch Stadium in St. Louis was the Cardinals 7 and the Orioles 5 in this series finale. O's did win the first two, so they still leave with a series win, but they take 2 out of 3, and they fall to 65 and 69 on the season with the loss. The Guardians were off on Thursday, which means the Orioles will enter Friday 3 games back of Cleveland for that final AL wildcard spot. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles loss on Thursday. And the first thing you need to know is Trevor Rogers was just not his usual self. For just the third time this season, and the first time since May 18th, Rogers allowed at least 6 earned runs in a single start. His final line, 5 innings of 6-run ball on 7 hits, 7 Ks, 1 walk, and 2 homers on 86 pitches thrown from the Oriole lefty. It was quite an odd start. He went out there, it was like a 9-pitch first inning with a couple of strikeouts where he was just pounding the strike zone. And then the Cardinals adjusted, and it was good offense by St. Louis into the second inning. They said, hey, Rogers throwing a ton of pitches down the middle. Let's just swing. And that's what they did. They went single, double, 3-run homer to begin that second inning off the bat of Blaze Jordan, who does have some pop, but it certainly has not been hitting very well, although Rogers gave him a pitch right down the middle, and immediately it was 3-0. And then it looked like Rogers was settling in. He had a good 3rd inning. He had a good 4th inning going, and he allows a base runner, and then he allows a 2-run homer to our old friend Ramon Arias to break it open at 5-0. Then there was a little more traffic in the 5th. He got out of a jam, but allowed another run. And it wasn't Trevor Rogers, right? This is the first time since May 29th that Rogers has allowed multiple home runs in a start. And that's been the difference, right? We talked about how low his home run rate last year was, which led to his historically low ERA. And now he's gone 5 consecutive starts, allowing at least 1 homer. That is a career-long streak for Trevor Rogers. It was a big reason for the success last year. And overall, his home run rate is still low this year. It's just much higher than last year, which was like historically low. His ground ball rate has dropped by 7% this season, so more balls in the air leading to more homers. But I really think the number one issue, I think we've talked about Trevor Rogers' changeup after every single start he has made this season here on this podcast. And that's a big part of what happened Thursday. The 3-run homer by Blaze Jordan was on a changeup that sat right in the middle of the plate. And if you're watching here on the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel, you'll see this chart from Baseball Savant. These are the 8 changeups that Rogers threw to Cardinals right-handed batters on Thursday. And again, the goal is to get it down and away. You could maybe say 1 of those 8 changeups succeeded in getting down and away. So many, only 1 was like truly, really in the strike zone. That was the one that Jordan hit for the 3-run homer. 5 of the 8 were very clearly balls and pitches that aren't that hard to lay off of. It wasn't a pitch for him. And I do have to give him credit. Like, he only threw 8 changeups to righties. He clearly went away from the pitch as this game went on because he had no feel for it. So he kind of gave up on it and started throwing his sweeper to right-handed hitters. Now, that's something Rogers has always done dating back to last year. It was kind of a surprise pitch, but that was when he was able to command his changeup down and away, and then he would throw a sweeper with different break, and righties would take it for a called strike 3. He would backdoor it perfectly. He hasn't done that as much this season. It's because he hasn't been able to play it off the changeup because the changeup hasn't been good. But 27% of his pitches to Cardinals righties on Thursday were the sweeper. That is the second highest sweeper percentage to right-handed hitters of Rogers' career. He did it 29% in a start with the Marlins all the way back in 2022. This is just not something we've seen him do in an Oriole uniform, and it allowed him to adjust. And I really did think after watching him in the third and fourth, like, he's still going to get a quality start. He's going to give up that homer, but he's going to get through 6 innings, a 3-run ball, and give the O's a chance to win. And he got better, but also not really. It was just a weird start. Hopefully he can kind of dump that one and move on to the next one. Second thing you need to know from Thursday is that it really just took too long for the Orioles offense to solve the Cardinals bullpen game. The Cards, who saw one of their starters, Hunter Dobbins, go on the injured list last week, and they had some weird timing with games, so that even though they called up Quinn Matthews to take his spot, Matthews wasn't on enough rest to pitch Thursday. So the Cardinals went with a bullpen game. Gordon Graceffo got the start. He's been kind of a multi-inning reliever for the Cardinals this year, and he hadn't pitched in this series yet, so he was the obvious choice to start. And 2 1/3 innings was his maximum outing length this year, but it was like, okay, if he keeps his pitch count down, he could go 3 innings. The Cardinals were expecting 2. Well, he went those 3 innings because he went 9 up, 9 down with 4 strikeouts going through the Orioles' order the first time. They had no chance. And this is a team that scored 21 total runs in the first 2 games of this series against, maybe the best 2 Cardinals starters in their rotation that are at least healthy right now. And then they get the bullpen game against a bad bullpen. This is easily a bottom 10 and arguably a bottom 5 bullpen in Major League Baseball right now. And they bullpen game the Orioles to where the O's enter the 7th inning of this game with 1 run. Like, they got a little rally against the lefty Justin Brewhill to get a run in the 5th, but Gastelum was freaking nasty again like he was on Wednesday night. And, this is the Orioles, right? 21 runs in 2 games, then 1 run in 6 innings against a bad bullpen game. And maybe it's got something to do with Pete. How about Pete Alonso? 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. Right here at the end of the greatest offensive month of his career. It's just the 5th time in Pete's career he's gone 0 for 4 with 4 Ks. He actually did it once with the Orioles back in April, and then 3 times before that with the Mets. That was odd to see. He did come up in a couple of big spots and did not get the job done. And maybe that's an indicator of just how much Pete has been carrying this Orioles offense recently, that, he has 1 off game, and it's like, what in the world is happening here? Third thing you need to know from Thursday's loss is that Coby Mayo just keeps destroying lefties. Finally, the O's got to a relief pitcher. That's the one thing with a bullpen game. That at least one reliever is going to have a bad day. That bad day was to the lefty Caleb Ferguson, who came in the 7th inning. Some lefties coming up for the O's. Cardinals leading 6-1. Should be an easy inning. It was not. CES infield single, Dylan Beavers walk, and Coby Mayo crushes a 3-run homer off the lefty Ferguson, 446 feet to center field to cut it to a 6-4 Cardinals lead and get the O's right back in the game. Mayo, who entered the day with a 199 WRC plus against left-handed pitching, meaning he has been 99% better, basically double as good, twice as good as the league average against lefties. That's going to go up with this swing. Meanwhile, he's got a 42 WRC plus against right-handed pitchers. That is 58% worse than league average. Essentially, when he's facing a lefty, he gives the production of 2025 Aaron Judge, who won the MVP. When he is facing a righty, he gives the production of 2025 John Birdie, utility infielder who didn't really hit, who retired from baseball this week. So when Blaze Alexander gets back, hopefully, it could be as early as today, Coby Mayo can kind of just go back to being fully a platoon bat for the Orioles playing against lefties and still help them because he's so good at that. And tune in on the next segment. There's going to be a lot more on Mayo's platoon success this year. Fourth thing you need to know from Thursday is that Gunnar Henderson had a good moment and followed it with a bad moment, as he's done so many times this year. Comes up with a big swing in the 8th inning, RBI double, kept the O's comeback going, cuts it to a 1-run game, 6-5, gets himself to second base as the tying run with only 1 out in the 8th. And you got to give credit to these Orioles, right? 3 in the 7th, 1 in the 8th. They always fight until the end, fought their way right back into this game. But the very next batter, Samuel Basallo, hits a ground ball right back to the pitcher. And the pitcher, George Soriano, does a good job turning around, looking at Gunnar, who, of course, makes a bad base running play and is caught in no man's land between second and third. Gunnar tries to go for third, and Soriano throws him out at third base for the second out of the inning. Kind of looked safe on the replay, and Gunnar thought he was safe, and the Orioles did challenge, but of course, the call stands because MLB replay is completely broken. And I will say, like, Soriano almost made an error and threw that ball into left field, which would have allowed Gunnar to score easily and tie the game. But the Cardinals' third baseman, Blaze Jordan, made an incredible catch and tag to get the out. Now, he did get what looked like pretty seriously injured on that play and had to leave the game, so hoping the best for him moving forward. But, you get Gunnar finally putting a great swing on the ball, drives it the other way into the left center field gap in a big spot with a runner in scoring position. And, of course, he has to follow it up immediately with a base running mistake. And it's not like it killed the Orioles, right? Like, CES flew out to left to end the inning with the next batter anyway. And, if Gunnar had just stayed at second, the pitcher would have turned around and thrown out Basayo at first on that grounder. So it still would have been the second out of the inning. But you never know. You never know what a sequence looks like, how it's pitched differently if there's a runner on second instead of a runner on first against CES. And for a while here in August, it looked like Gunnar was turning it around. The first half of the month, he was having his best month of the year through August 17th. Gunnar in 15 games had a 144 WRC plus. He was being patient. He had 13 walks to only 8 strikeouts. His chase rate was basically cut in half, down to 18%. He had a really good 51% hard hit rate. But in the 9 games since August 18th, he's 6 for 34. That's a 176 average, just 2 extra base hits, 4 walks to 7 Ks. Hard hit rate down to 30%. Chase rate has doubled again up to 33%. And he looks like the same hitter again who has struggled through the meaty part of the middle of the Orioles season. It can be a lot of things. Obviously, it was an incredibly small sample because the O's only did it for 5 games, but he did hit 381 when Albernaz moved him down to 5th in the batting order, and now he is back hitting 3rd pretty consistently. Again, we're about to turn the calendar to September. I don't think anything's going to change. I mean, Gunnar could have another hot stretch. That's obviously believable, but is Albernaz going to move him down to 5th or 6th for good? No. And I hate to say this, but he's actively hurting the team when he's hitting that high because he's coming up, he's getting more plate appearances, he's hitting in more big spots, and even when he delivers like he did on Thursday, he's still following it with a mistake. Just a completely lost season for Gunnar Henderson. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 7-5 loss to the Cardinals on Thursday afternoon to close out this series is that the Cam Sanders hive can continue to stand up. Sanders coming in relief of Trevor Rogers in the 6th inning. He gives the Orioles 2 scoreless innings of relief with 4 strikeouts. Not a ton of swing and miss, but he threw strikes. Guys just couldn't see the baseball coming out of his hand, basically. It was tough that Anthony Nunez did give up a run in the 8th, ended up being a big insurance run for the Cardinals. He had nobody on, 2 outs in an 0-2 count, and somehow gave up a run in that inning. The stuff, though, looked really good again after Nunez had that just unbelievably dominant inning to close the game on Monday night. But I just can't get enough of Cam Sanders. Like, what a find he was for the Orioles on waivers. It'll be really interesting to see if the O's are still in this race in September, what kind of longer-term role he plays in this bullpen. And, it wasn't exactly high leverage on Thursday, right? When he pitched in the 6th, they were down 6-1, and then still down 6-4 when he pitched in the 7th inning. So it's not like you're putting him out there in the biggest spots, but he is certainly getting the outs when the Orioles need them. Just didn't have enough in this game to get the sweep. But I will say, the Orioles are on this 9-game road trip, which I'm calling essentially the last quote unquote easy stretch of their season. It's Cardinals, A's, Rockies. The Cardinals are by far the best of the 3 teams the Orioles are seeing on this road trip. So the O's, at the very least, need to win all 3 of these series and probably need, I feel like, to go 7-2. So they start 2-1. They get the series win against by far the best team of the 3. I think in a world where the Orioles do go 7-2 on this trip, one of the losses comes in St. Louis. So I don't think a bad outcome in this series at all, but you got to turn it on against the A's this weekend. And we'll get to that at the end of the show. But first, I want to talk a little bit about Coby Mayo, a little bit more about him and the level to which he is truly crushing lefties and just being unplayable against righties. It's kind of wild to watch at this point. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Indeed. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps connect employers with candidates who match specific needs like skills, certifications, and location. So less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. And the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Now, look, like the Orioles were looking for a third baseman, Blaze Alexander out. They might have gone to Indeed to go and find Christian Encarnacion-Strand earlier this season, and that's been a great move. Maybe they should continue that when bringing in players. And you can spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. So the Orioles lost on Thursday in St. Louis, not able to complete the sweep of the Cardinals, but I still think a successful series, taking 2 out of 3 against a solid team with a better record than you here on the road. But one of the good things that came out of Thursday was Coby Mayo homered against a lefty again. A 3-run shot in the 7th inning against lefty reliever Caleb Ferguson got the Orioles right back into the game and made it 6-4 and just continued this unbelievable surge that Mayo is on against left-handed pitching this year. He's got 18 home runs this year. 14 of those 18 homers have come against lefties. That ties Matt Olson for the big league lead this year for homers against left-handed pitchers. He entered the game with an MLB best 199 WRC plus against lefties. That has gone up over the 200 mark after hitting that home run in the 7th inning. That makes Coby Mayo the 59th player since 2000. I think that's when Fangraphs kind of started tracking the platoon splits really specifically, and also it's just easy to go in this century. 59th player this century. So we're talking about 2 or 3 per season who have at least 100 plate appearances against lefties and have a 200 WRC plus or better against left-handed pitching. The only Orioles to do it in this century were 2011 Matt Wieters, who had a 201 WRC plus against lefties, and 2014 incredible 6-WAR season Steve Pearce, one of my favorite players ever, who had a 208 WRC plus against lefties. But here's the thing. Those guys were everyday players. Like, yes, Wieters was getting a day off every once in a while as a catcher, but he was the starting catcher. And Steve Pearce was arguably the most important player on a 2014 Orioles team that won the American League East. Like, he was out there as much as Buck Showalter could put him out there. They were not guys who were being used in a platoon. And Coby Mayo's not being used in a strict platoon, right? Especially since Blaze Alexander's been out. Mayo is starting against righties. Now, not as much since they kind of discovered CES, and of course, since they got Basayo back, but he's still not just playing against lefties. But when you look at the list of the 59 players to do this since 2000, most of the guys on the list are, Hall of Fame level, all-star level, incredible everyday players who just happen to also be specifically good against lefties that year, right? And they're not like Mayo, who entered again Thursday with a 42 WRC plus, meaning 58% worse than league average against righties. The second worst hitter in Major League Baseball against right-handed pitchers this year with at least 200 plate appearances. You go down the leaderboard, it's Barry Bonds, it's Sammy Sosa, Aaron Judge, Ryan Braun, Paul Goldschmidt, JD Martinez, Buster Posey. These are the kinds of guys who were out there. They were hitting everybody, but especially were hitting lefties in those spots. And when you go down this list, again, it's 59 players who have done this, including Mayo in this century. The closest thing I can find to a real platoon player who had the best year was Jordan Luplow, a right-handed hitting outfielder for the 2019 Tampa Bay Rays. Luplow actually had a huge home run in the ALDS that year, coming off a lefty. Luplow had a 202 WRC plus and 155 plate appearances against lefties that year, and a 56 WRC plus in just over 100 plate appearances against righties. This was a true platoon guy. And Mayo's not that extreme. Mayo's got 122 plate appearances against lefties and 223 against righty. He's still playing, more than 100 more PAs against righties this year. But most of the guys on this list who are everyday players, they have like triple the amount of plate appearances against righties than they do against lefties, because there's just a lot more righty pitchers in the league and you see righties a lot more often. And if you're a true everyday player, you're going to face a lot more righties. But I wouldn't call Mayo a strict platoon guy, but he's definitely not an everyday player. And especially once the O's got Basayo back, and when they do get Blaze Alexander back here soon, Coby Mayo is absolutely not going to be an everyday player. So the question is right now, Is Coby Mayo the best platoon bat in baseball in this century? Because so many of these guys on the list were not platoon bats. The argument could be made because he's having right now a season pretty equal to what Jordan Luplow did in 2019. And if you want to look back on Orioles history, Coby Mayo now has an OPS right around 1,100 against left-handed pitching this year. If you look for Orioles all time to have an 1,100 OPS or better against lefties when they faced him at least 100 times in a season, Coby Mayo would be just the 10th Oriole ever to do that if he finishes that feat and finishes strong against lefties. Albert Bell, Frank Robinson, Randy Milligan, Merv Rettenmund, Chris Hoyles, Matt Wieters, Cal Ripken Jr., Steve Pearce, Don Baylor, and Coby Mayo. And you kind of look at that list and you're like, well, Bell was a big masher. Robinson, obviously an MVP. Hoyles and Wieters were a starting catcher. Cal is Cal. Steve Pearce, that was in 2014 when he had his incredible career. Maybe you're looking at like 1970 Merv Rettenmund. I mean, he played 106 games, but again, he was not an everyday player, but I mean, the guy went out there and hit 322 that year. I mean, they were trying to get him out there. He finished 19th in MVP voting the year after that. I mean, the O's were trying to get Merv Rettenmund on the field to get him out in 1970 when they went and won that World Series. And then, the other guy is 1975 Don Baylor for the Orioles, who was an everyday player. He played 145 games. He finished 20th in MVP voting. Like the only guy on this list really who's like a true platoon bat is Mayo. And it's just absurd that, platoons are a little more popular than they used to be, though. The Orioles in the 80s were the team that really popularized this with, Sweet Low, John Lowenstein, the lefty, and Gary Renicky, the righty, platooning in the outfield for the 82 and 83 Orioles and helping them win a World Series. And that's the guy, that you want to compare it to, right? Like, oh, how does he compare to Gary Renicky? I mean, he's doing much better at this job than Gary Renicky was doing back in the day. So this is a serious platoon. And what it means for Mayo is that, will he ever be an everyday player? I don't know, right? You'd hope you get Jordan Westburg back next year. You've certainly found something in Blaze Alexander. Now you've got Christian Encarnacion-Strand in the mix. Obviously, Pete Alonso is going to be blocking first base for a while. And even when he gets days off over there, the O's are going to want to put Sam Obasayo out there, and they have him locked up long-term. So unless Coby Mayo wants to finally move to the outfield, there's not a lot of room for him to play looking forward to 2027. But if he's going to hit lefties like this, he will have a spot on this roster to just play against lefties. They'll find a way to get him in there, and hopefully he can mash. And maybe that's not the career Mayo wanted, and because the defense has been suspect, that makes it, again, even less likely he's an everyday player moving forward. But early in the year, I didn't think he'd find a role. And he certainly found a role to be, legitimately one of the great platoon bats of all time is what Coby Mayo is doing in this season. And I want to give a small apology to him because I completely wrote him off after just the disastrous start he had to this year. I don't think he's like a great player because a great player would be a little better against righties and be able to play defense, and he can't do either of those things. But kudos to him for carving out a role to help this Orioles team in 2026. It's just not something I thought he'd be able to do. And hopefully he's going to keep carving out that role this weekend because the Orioles will face two left-handed starters in the 3 games in Sacramento this weekend. I'll preview a huge series against a really bad team coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Odoo. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place. Odoo is one platform to manage, grow, and scale your business. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working toward the same goal. And that's true in sports, just like in business. And it's going to be big for the Orioles this weekend in Sacramento in a AAA ballpark that is a hitter's haven and a nightmare for pitchers. The O's got to know that, hey, their pitchers are going to give up some runs this weekend. But their offense has to be able to pick those guys up. No, hey, we're way more talented than the A's are. Just score more runs and get out of there and win those games. And great organizations, they win because operations matter. And that's why you should get Odoo. Odoo is one platform to manage, grow, and scale your business. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. All right, this final quote-unquote easy with giant quotation marks road trips, because I'm sure a lot of teams who are playing the Orioles this year said that's an easy trip. But the final one continues for the Orioles this weekend. They started it taking 2 out of 3 in St. Louis. Again, the best by far of the 3 teams that they will play on this trip. So you'll certainly take 2 out of 3. But that means you pretty much absolutely have to sweep at least one of the final 2 series on this trip. And maybe sweeping in Sacramento is in the cards. The Orioles and the A's begin a 3-game set tonight in Sacramento. The Sacramento, Las Vegas, Oakland, whatever A's, they are 53-81, hanging out right around the worst record in Major League Baseball. This team was 500. They were 38-38 just over 2 months ago on June 19th. They were right in the middle of the AL slop mix. They were one of these many teams competing for a playoff spot in mid-June. They have a 15-43 record since that point. That is absurdly bad. They have been, obviously, the worst team in baseball since mid-June. But they have won 2 series in a row. They just took 2 out of 3 in Houston against the Astros, then came home and just won 2 out of 3 against the Twins. Both of those series wins over AL slop teams, so certainly helped out the Orioles. We thank them for that. And they also did win a series against the O's earlier this year. Took 2 of 3 in Baltimore, May 8th through the 10th. Now, that's when the A's were playing good baseball, had a winning record, had a healthy team. That is not the case anymore. On the season, they are 25th in team WRC plus with a 94. Now, when you look at the runs scored measure, they're a little bit better, but WRC plus adjusts for ballpark, and they play in a Mickey Mouse ballpark. They are still 11th in team on-base percentage. That's the only thing offensively they do that's ranked in the top half of the league. And they are incredibly injured right now. Jacob Wilson, their great, hitter for average. Tyler Soderstrom, great all-around left fielder who I want the Orioles to trade for. Shea Langoliers, their all-star catcher, and Nick Kurtz, their all-star first baseman, are all currently on the injured list. All were having great offensive years. It makes their offense look a lot different. They have only 2 healthy hitters with a WRC plus better than league average on the year. That's infielders Donovan Walton and Zach Geloff are the only 2 doing that. And Donovan Walton was like a waiver claim from like a month and a half ago. The only thing keeping the A's afloat is that 3 guys who have either struggled this year or come up from AAA, Lawrence Butler, Henry Bolte, and Jeff McNeil, all have been red hot in the month of August, specifically in these last 2 series wins, really been the main reasons why the A's have won back-to-back series for the first time seemingly since like the first Bush administration, it feels like. But this team really can't pitch. And some of it's the ballpark, but they're still 29th in team ERA at a 5.48. They are dead last in bullpen ERA at 5.64. And even when you factor in the ballpark, this is still pretty easily a bottom 5 pitching staff in Major League Baseball. In terms of relievers we're looking at, they got our old friend Scott Blewett off waivers. He's actually been pretty good. They got a lefty in Hogan Harris, who's pretty nasty from the left side. They've also got our old buddy Drew Rom in their bullpen right now. And they just recently moved the flame-throwing righty Elvis Alvarado to the closer role. He throws 99 with good stuff. He got a few saves over the past week. So it's not as bad as it looked a couple of weeks ago, but it's still pretty bleak in their bullpen. And again, they're still playing in a AAA park in Sacramento. It's incredibly hitter-friendly. The StatCast park factors make it the number 2 ballpark in baseball for offense overall, number 2 for home runs, number 2 for doubles. There's a lot of runs that get scored in this park. You add to the fact that they have just a bad pitching staff before you take a look at the ballpark. These should be, not saying they will be, but they should be some fairly high-scoring games, at least on the Orioles side this weekend. And it's some late baseball, so get ready to stay up with the Orioles on Masson beginning tonight at 9:40 p.m. Eastern Time. The A's, when I last checked, they were TBD for all 3 of these games. Let's do a live check here on Thursday night. Are they still TBD? Yes, they are still TBD. Now, the Orioles are going with Brandon Young tonight in Game 1. We'll see if he can bounce back from some shaky starts recently as he's starting to run out of gas a little bit. The A's are TBD, but likely if they stay on turn with their rotation, left-handed pitcher Jacob Lopez would take the ball tonight. He's got a 4.98 ERA in 18 starts. Lopez has actually been awesome. In his last 8 starts since they moved him back to the rotation, he is the shining figure in their pitching staff right now. He's got a 2.23 ERA with a 30% strikeout rate to an 8% walk rate in his last 8 starts. It's a fastball at 91 miles an hour from the left side, but it's this slow 96-mile-per-hour slider that never stops moving, gets a ton of whiffs, and no one hits him hard. He's got one of the lowest hard hit rates against him, average exit velocity against him, and he gets elite extension down the mound. So 91 basically looks like 96 to hitters because of where he throws from. He was pretty good against the O's in Baltimore earlier this year, gave him 5 1/3 of 2-run ball. He's pitched well against the Orioles in the past. This is the kind of hitter kind of pitcher that really seems to frustrate the Orioles. So we'll see what they can do. And without Tyler O'Neill, that's a tough break to face a lefty like this. Then on Saturday, it's even later, a 10:05 p.m. Eastern start. Again, it's TBD for the A's against Shane Baz for the Orioles, but it looks like it'll be the righty Jack Perkins going for Oakland. He's pitched as both a reliever and a starter this year, but in 90 1/3 innings total, he's got a 6.68 ERA. He is not having a very good season. In Perkins' last time out, they actually threw an opener for an inning before him, and then he went 5 innings in bulk relief. So we'll see if the A's want to do that again. But Perkins was a reliever early in the year. He was pretty good. He's got good stuff. And then in June, they moved him into the rotation, and it's been a disaster. He's got an 8.17 ERA as a starting pitcher. He's had maybe 2 good starts out of like the 13 or so that he's made this year. He's got a sweeper and a changeup that gets solid whiffs, but his fastball at 96 just gets crushed. It's kind of a dead zone fastball. He doesn't command anything very well. This should be a guy the Orioles should be all over on Saturday. And the series finale is on Sunday, more regular time for baseball, 4:05 p.m. on Sunday. Chris Bassett, who just came off maybe his best start as an Oriole, will go for the Birds. And again, it's TBD for the A's, but if they stay on target, it'll be another lefty. The veteran Jeffrey Springs, who's had a really bad year as well. He's got a 6.08 ERA in 24 starts for the A's this season. Springs came out of the gate awesome. His first 4 starts of the year were incredible. He looked like the Rays version of Jeffrey Springs. He's been pretty awful since then. He has not even completed 6 innings in any of his previous 13 starts entering this one. He still has a great changeup that gets a ton of whiffs against righty hitters, but his fastball doesn't have good velo. It gets crushed, and he really hasn't had much besides the changeup all year, which has made the changeup worse because teams are basically sitting on it, and they're able to hit it more than they ever have. So this should be hopefully a weekend in this tiny ballpark with 2 lefties for Coby Mayo, the star of today's episode, to feast and get the Orioles to a series win. Let's be honest. You have to, at the very least, win 2 out of 3 this weekend. And then if you do that and then you sweep the Rockies, you have a good 7-2 trip. You'd love to sweep. Bare minimum is 2 out of 3. If the O's lose this series, even if they get 1 win, they are not going to be in a good spot heading to Colorado, and then the series or the schedule gets a whole lot tougher. So hopefully it is a series win, and hopefully it is a series sweep. But either way, I'll be back with you on Monday to recap all the action. Until then, like, comment, subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. Leave a 5-star rating and a review. Subscribe and follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. You can always shoot me an email, lockedonorioles@gmail.com. Talk some ball, ask some questions, give some feedback. I'm always happy to chat with y'all via email. If you want to chat with me even more, you can join the Everydayer Club for $5 per month. You get ad-free episodes. You get access to our Discord channel. We're always talking ball in there. And you get 2 bonus episodes per month, including one coming up this weekend, comparing Jackson Holliday to other recent #1 overall prospects in this century. You can sign up with the link in the show notes. It's lockedonorioles.supercast.com. That does it for today. Again, back Monday, recapping the weekend series between the O's and the A's. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.